welcome to the 11th Annual Judges Night for the Armenian Bar Association. It's truly an honor to be among such outstanding leaders, friends, and colleagues. This community elevates unlike any other. And tonight, not only do we honor the achievements of our distinguished recipients, but we shine a light on the strength, on the resilience, and on the unity that defines the Armenian spirit. This evening is more than just a recognition. It's a reminder of the power that we hold when we come together, when we expand our circle, and we welcome new faces into our community. We invite you to be part of this vibrant network. We invite you to collaborate with us, provide mentorship, and provide growth for those that are seeking a better future. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Tonight's theme, you'll see, focuses in on independence and the independence of the judiciary. But before we get into the details of the program, of course, we're going to invite Lucy Varpetian to the stage. We can't emphasize how important and critical Lucy is to this entire program. It does not exist without her. And we've had the pleasure of being co-chairs for the last 5 or 6 years. And I've told Lucy, if she quits, I quit, and this night's over. She is amazing. She's been the chairperson of the Armenian Bar for the last 3 years. She's bragging that her term is almost up, but we're not going to let her go. She's going to have to stay.
I have 3 days. 3 more days.
So with that, Lucy, take us away.
Բարի երեկո, բոլորին. Good evening, distinguished guests, colleagues, and members of the Armenian Bar Association. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you to this year's Judges Night and Awards Dinner, a night dedicated to celebrating the excellence in the judiciary and reflecting on the principles that form the bedrock of justice in a free society. Tonight's theme, the importance of a strong and independent judiciary, could not be more timely or more vital. Around the world, and even here at home, we are reminded that the rule of law does not sustain itself. It must be protected, nurtured, and sometimes even fought for. We are especially proud tonight to honor 3 distinguished individuals who embody that principle and have committed their careers to upholding the ideals of judicial integrity and independence. Judicial Appointment Secretary Luis Cespedes, California Supreme Court Justice Joshua Groban, and Court of Appeal Justice Helen Zukin. We thank you for your service, and we thank you for reminding us that the promise of justice is not just a concept, it is a duty. But even as we celebrate that promise here tonight, we cannot ignore the places where it is being tragically denied. In the wake of the ethnic cleansing of the Armenian population of Artsakh by Azerbaijan, dozens of Armenian civilians and former political leaders have been illegally detained and held hostage. Many have been denied access to counsel, due process, and basic human rights. They have not received fair trials because they were never meant to. Their detention is not about justice. It is about power, silence, and erasure. This reality stands in stark contrast to the values we hold dear, that justice must be impartial, transparent, and accessible to all. That is why the independence of our judiciary is not a luxury. It is a shield, in Armenian, a vahan. It is what stands between the individual and the unchecked authority of the state. It is what gives voice to the voiceless and hope to the oppressed. So tonight, as we honor those who have devoted themselves to preserving this ideal, let us also renew our own commitment to it. Let us advocate not only for a fair system here, but also for justice abroad. Now, before I go, there is one important thing I must do. I was asked by Miriam and Armin that I recognized the dignitaries among us. I will now begin to read the names of the 133 judicial officers here tonight. Hold your applause till the end. Of course, I'm kidding. But if you'll indulge us for a few minutes, I thought it was important to see where we all have come from. May I ask that the federal court judges, both sitting and retired, to please stand and be recognized. California Supreme Court judges. And they aren't just California Supreme Court justices, they are former judicial appointment secretaries. And with appointment secretary Luis Cespedes here, that is 3 in one room in one night. So I will ask you, if you had your interview with one of the 3 of them, would you please stand now? Now, very near and dear to our hearts are Justice Baxter and Justice Puchikian, both of whom were also appointment secretaries. Now, I know of at least 2, but if you had your interview with one of the 2 of them, would you please stand up? Now, I have to tell you that we had no idea that Justice Sukin was going to be nominated to be the presiding judge when we selected her to be an honoree tonight. May I ask the California Court of Appeal justices to please stand and be recognized. At the trial court level, we've had individuals drive from very, very far. Now, San Bernardino Superior Court is not the farthest, but where are you? San Diego is the farthest. Orange County Superior Court. And the Los Angeles Superior Court. Also, all the way from San Diego is District Attorney Summer Stephan, who is, of course, Armenian. May I now ask the members of the Board of Governors to please stand and remain standing if you can, because I'm also going to ask our committee members to stand, our volunteers, those who've sponsored an event at their firm, who have donated financially, put in hours at our pro bono clinic, mentored a student, a young lawyer, an aspiring judge, either one-on-one or to an entire group, offered a CLE, don't be shy, offered a CLE program, conducted a Know Your Rights program in Armenian on TV. Those who've written reports to the United Nations advocating for the return of hostages and safeguarding religious sites, participating in advancing the rule of law in Armenia. All of those people who are not standing up, and I can name names, are responsible for what happens on a day-to-day basis at the Armenian Bar Association. Thank you, Vicki. So I would like to thank everyone for being here tonight. Enjoy your evening.
All right, it's almost dinner time. But before we get there, we have one video. One video, I promise. It's 6 minutes. One video. Then we can have dinner after that.
For over 35 years, the Armenian Bar Association has stood as a unifying force, elevating legal excellence, preserving cultural identity, and promoting justice for all. From courtrooms across the globe to the villages of Artsakh, our members have dedicated themselves to the pursuit of fairness, integrity, and the rule of law.
What drew me to the Armenian Bar Association when it was first formed was really my own experience. So I knew how helpful bar associations could be, in particular, bar associations representing minority, racial, and ethnic groups. The governor encouraged me and my successors to work openly and diligently to encourage applicants, not only women, but also minority applicants as well.
For Armenians, democratic institutions, the rule of law, the independence of the judiciary are not just some abstract ideas. They are not just some important guideposts for a civil and orderly society. It's a lot more personal for us because it was precisely the absence of them that led to the destruction of our historic homeland, where millions of Armenians lived for thousands of years. It was the absence of these principles that led to the genocide of our people and that fuels its continuing denial. It was the absence of these principles that broke our families. As Christian Armenians, we were not allowed to testify in Turkish Sharia courts in any lawsuit in which a Muslim was a party. As Christian Armenians, we were overtaxed and underrepresented. We did not have the right to bear arms or own certain types of property while everybody else did. They made our young boys dig their own graves. They stole our little girls and made them into their child brides. There were no democratic institutions in Ottoman Turkey to help the Armenians then. There was no rule of law to help protect the Armenians. And there was no independence of the judiciary to help shield the Armenians.
This year, we reflect on a core truth. An independent judiciary is not just a pillar of democracy, it is its very foundation. It ensures that every voice is heard, every right protected, and every decision rendered with fairness and impartiality.
I have been involved with the Armenian American Bar Association for well over a decade. It's been a delight to see the organization grow. I think for several years they have been so intentional in trying to ensure that they not only represent the Armenian community, but that they represent the entire community through the lens of Armenians. I think they are serving a much greater purpose in trying to ensure that they are not only part of the fabric of our judicial system and our legal profession, but they are leaders within that profession. You need to have a judiciary that is representative of the community that it serves. So that requires diversity. It requires the two other branches of government to see the judiciary as a co-equal branch, to fund it appropriately, to ensure that it meets its mission.
When the Republic of Armenia emerged as an independent state in 1991, after 70 years of Soviet subjugation, the Armenian Bar Association jumped fast and leaped far to ensure that this new young country would be built on pillars of fairness and accountability, on the enjoyment of rights and the enforcement of responsibilities. Our members traveled to Armenia on many occasions, rolled up their sleeves, and offered their input on the drafting of a new constitution. One of the most memorable of those trips, Justice Antonin Scalia went with us to Armenia. And ever since those days of exciting transition, around 30 years ago, the Armenian Bar Association keeps feeding the wonderful synergies between that land of Ararat and this beautiful land of liberty.
We honor those who uphold that promise. Their commitment to justice strengthens our institutions and preserves public trust in the legal system.
The Armenian Bar Association has played a critical role in the development of the democracy in Armenia in its early transitional years and continues to do so by fundamentally offering infrastructure, knowledge, experience, equal access to justice to every individual who comes through a courtroom door, whether that be virtually or in person. So it's of the utmost importance that we are always assuring that the rule of law is followed and that the independence at its core level is presented. I would like to just thank the Armenian Bar Association for the amazing committed work they do for and standing behind the judiciary and understanding that we are collectively stronger than when we stand alone, and now more than ever having the community of the Armenian Bar Association behind us is indescribable.
Independence of the judiciary, whether in the United States or in Armenia, is not an optional topping. It's the very base root of freedom and equality. And for Armenians, it has proven to be the difference between life and death. And that is exactly why we insist on it everywhere we are.
At the Armenian Bar Association, we stand proudly along these guardians of the law. Their example inspires our continued work, supporting access to justice, mentoring future legal leaders, and advancing the values that sustain a just and democratic society. Their words remind us of what's at stake and what must always be protected: justice, dignity, and the enduring independence of the courts.
I have the absolute honor and privilege to introduce Judge Armenuhi Amy Ashvanyan. She needs no introduction. She is a trailblazer, and instead of going through her bio, I want to take a moment and share my first impression of when I met her in 2018 when we went to Armenia, and we had the honor to go to Artsakh, and we stood in a dark forest, and she shared her story with me, and to this day, I get goosebumps in remembering that moment, because she truly gives us the voice and the courage to show up and to repeat even when we're tired, even when we think we're at our lowest. And for that, I want to thank her. She needs no introduction. She's an amazing friend, colleague, judge, a wonderful mother, but most importantly, to me, she's an amazing role model. And even my mom called me and said, "Miriam, there's an Armenian-born American judge." And I said, "Yes, Mom, that's Armenuhi Amy Ashvanyan." Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mayram, for those beautiful introduction words. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I'm extremely honored to introduce to you our first honoree of tonight, Associate Justice Joshua Groban. I was preparing my remarks for this evening, and I called my very good friend, retired Justice of California Supreme Court, Carlos Moreno. And he said, when Justice Groban called him in December of 2018 to tell him that, much to his surprise, Governor Brown was nominating him for an appointment to California Supreme Court, Justice Moreno told him that he should start taking voice lessons because people are going to think that our eclectic governor is appointing a singing justice. Now you're thinking, why would Justice Moreno say that, and what does Justice Groban have to do with singing? A couple of years ago, Justice Groban was asked, jokingly, if it was true that he was the only Supreme Court justice with a top 10 hit. People often confuse him with a music artist, Joshua Groban, who not only tweeted Justice Groban to congratulate him on his Supreme Court appointment, but he showed up to the party in Justice's honor that night. You see, he lived a block away from the person who was hosting the party, found out about it, and just showed up. However, Justice Groban's mother, Deborah Isaacson Groban, clarified who's who in an article a few years ago by saying, her son is the real Josh Groban. Justice Groban knew he wanted to be a lawyer from a pretty early age. When he was asked about it, he said, I'm not quite sure how I got that in my head, other than the robust discussions that would break out at dinner table amongst physician, social worker, lawyer, political science professor, and I think that put me on my way, so to speak. A native of San Diego, Justice Groban received his Bachelor's of Arts degree from Stanford University, majoring in modern thought and literature and graduating with honors and distinction. He earned his JD from Harvard Law School, where he graduated cum laude, and then clerked for Honorable William C. Connor in the Southern District of New York. He was an accomplished litigator from 1999 to 2010, where he handled a wide range of complex commercial litigation matters. But then he took the unusual step of leaving practice, in private practice, to become a legal advisor to Jerry Brown for Governor 2010 campaign. He had every intention of getting back to private practice when the election was over, so he thought, but was asked to stay to help the transition team, and then ultimately stayed for 8 years to serve as senior advisor to Governor Jerry Brown. While he remained in Los Angeles and traveled to Sacramento, he taught appellate advocacy and practice at UCLA School of Law, and frequently lectured on judicial appointments. His primary work, however, involved judicial appointments. Justice Groban screened and interviewed over 1,000 candidates for judicial office in those 8 years. Over an 8-year span, the governor, with Groban's assistance and advice, appointed, are you ready for this? 644 judges. Including 4 of our current Supreme Court justices, 52 justices for California Court of Appeal. These appointments have transformed California's judiciary and have lauded as the most diverse in the state's history. When Justice Groban was asked about his role in diversifying the California judiciary and why he was so dedicated to that cause, his answer was, it's a simple proposition. Our courts should look like the communities they serve. And when you think about all of the difficult and often terrifying positions people find themselves in courtrooms, and when those people walk into courtrooms and they don't see anyone that looks like them in their communities, it is invariably going to cause distrust in the system. Everyone I have spoken to about Justice Groban described him as patient, intelligent, person with compassion and calm demeanor. from my own personal experience in meeting Justice Groban and attending a couple of his judicial appointment lectures, and of course my one-on-one interview with him when I applied to become a judge, I can attest to all and add that he's very personable and approachable. He is an individual who embodies humility and empathy. But in my book, he is the best poker face interviewer on earth. I'm personally grateful to Justice Groban for his role in making history 7.5 years ago. On a Saturday, February 24, 2018, I received a phone call from an unknown number. And I picked it up and I said, hello. A soft-spoken, pleasant voice of then Appointment Secretary Josh Groban said, hello, Mrs. Ashvanian. Congratulations. Governor Brown has appointed you to the bench. That phone call was just another ordinary congratulatory phone call that Joshua Groban made, handful of appointees, every few months for 8 years. Nothing extraordinary on that phone call. However, not knowing that phone call of his made history, not just in California, not just in the continental United States, but all the way to the Republic of Armenia. Because Governor Brown, with Justice Groban's assistance, advice, and recommendation, had appointed the first Armenia-born judge in the United States. That appointment for me was also very special because that same day, the second phone call went to my very good friend, Michael Amirian, who got appointed with me on the same day. So 2 Armenian American judges to the California bench on one day. But the connection between Justice Groban and Armenians didn't start there and did not stop there. You see, in the 8 years that he was the senior advisor and judicial appointment secretary, with Justice Groban's assistance, Governor Brown appointed 6 Armenian Americans to the bench in California Superior Court, 4 in Los Angeles County, 1 in Orange County, and 1 in San Diego County. But there's more. I tried to find more connections to Justice Groban, either at the Armenian Bar Association or the Armenian American community. And I found an Associated Press article right around the time he was nominated to the Supreme Court. And it was written by David Ettinger, who writes a blog about the court. And he said, Groban would be the first white male justice on the highly diverse court since Justice Marvin Baxter left in 2015. Justice Marvin Baxter, a longtime Armenian Bar Association member, a fellow Armenian American judge, justice, but the connection went further down because Justice Groban and Justice Baxter were both, as Lucy Barbadian mentioned, appointment secretaries for governors in their own time. And of course, everything comes in full circle, and there has to be a connection to George Dukmejian. So I looked at Justice Groban's seat, which was Justice Catherine Werdiger's seat, and I did a little bit digging. That seat belonged to Edward Pennelly. And who appointed Edward Pennelly? No one other than Governor George Dukmejian. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to introduce to you our first honoree, the Associate Justice of California Supreme Court, Joshua Groban.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for those very kind remarks and for this terrific honor. I feel particularly delighted because I know well the others that are being honored tonight and those who have been honored before me, and I am thrilled to be in their company. There are all sorts of politicized terms floating around these days that relate to the judiciary. DEI, affirmative action, activist judges, rogue judges. To be clear, I'm not going to address any of that. There's too much disagreement, too much passion, and too much emotion for me to go there. So I have a different goal, to touch tonight upon issues involving the judiciary where I think common agreement can be found, and to suggest to you that a politicized focus on certain terminology has gotten us all a bit sidetracked. As you heard, I spent 8 years in the governor's office thinking about what makes for a good judge, and have now spent another 7 years as a judge trying to get it right myself. And without using words that have become loaded, like diversity or equity, let me try to impart my view of those qualities that make for a good judge. I have about 24 quick traits that perhaps we can all agree on, and perhaps see that when we get beyond the politicized nomenclature, there is far less to argue about. So here goes. A good judge is a judge who remembers how terrified most litigants are to be in court and works to make them feel more comfortable rather than adding to their stress. A judge who has enough cultural awareness to realize that a party and a translator are having issues communicating with each other, and then take steps to address the problem that are consistent with the code of conduct. A judge that actually remembers what it was like to be a lawyer and shows some flexibility if someone appearing in front of them has a scheduling conflict. A judge who had a different career or rich life experiences before becoming a lawyer. A judge who struggled to get where they are and allows those experiences to enrich the kind of person and kind of jurist they have become. A judge with a low ego, because we all know that nobody's ego goes down once we put a robe on them. A judge that is willing to try new assignments like family or dependency, even if they did not practice in those areas, because they know that's where the greatest need is. A judge that might probe further in a probable cause hearing when an officer states somewhat vaguely that the suspect was, quote, acting suspiciously or not following commands. A judge who has the life skills to diffuse the contentiousness that can arise in court proceedings, particularly in assignments like family court, by redirecting the conversation in a more productive way. A judge that understands that everybody already knows that it is the judge who is in charge, so there is no reason to spend courtroom time trying to prove to everyone in the courtroom that the judge has the power. A judge that allows the lawyers appearing before them to make their case and doesn't assume they already know all the answers before they've heard from counsel. A judge that is not embarrassed to change their mind or say they were wrong. A judge that explains their rulings in a thoughtful way so that everyone feels heard and understands the basis of the ruling. A judge that is decisive, but not too decisive, as making up your mind too quickly doesn't serve anyone. A judge that appreciates and respects that certain communities may have a distrust of the legal system. A judge that understands that though the court cannot assist a pro per litigant, there are certain things that just have to be done differently with pro pers, and that's okay. A judge that is willing to say the words, "I don't know," and will take a recess or ask for additional briefing if necessary. A judge that doesn't get insulted if someone files a motion for rehearing, but instead views it as an opportunity to make sure they got it right. A judge who can walk that tightrope of keeping their calendar moving while also making litigants feel as though they got to make their case. A judge that remembers that for many of the litigants in their courtroom, they are seeing that person on the worst day of their lives and understands that a little empathy and patience goes a long way. A judge that understands that for so many, even a seemingly small fine could impact their ability to meet their basic needs for food and rent. A judge that appreciates that much of the time, emotional IQ is more important to being a good judge than intellectual IQ. A judge that comes from the community they serve and looks like the community they serve. And finally, a judge that has had some of the same life experiences as the litigants appearing in front of them. These, for me, are the 24 qualities that make for a good judge. And as I wrap up, I'll tell you one story that I think encapsulates all that I'm trying to convey to you tonight. This story was told to me by a newly appointed judge that I helped vet for appointment. The judge described to me that she was of Asian descent and grew up in a low-income household. Child Protective Services was in her courtroom, and the caseworker was describing why she had grave concerns about the child's welfare after conducting a home visit. The caseworker's description went something like this. The house was chaotic and crowded. Food was everywhere. Almost everyone in the home we spoke to described themselves as an auntie or a cousin, but when questioned further, it was unclear if they were actually related to the child. The kitchen was so jammed with people that you could barely move. The noise of people talking and moving about was deafening. Music was blaring. There were 3 rice cookers going at once. The rice cookers were hot and accessible to small children in the home. Dinner was not served until close to 10 o'clock at night. And here is what that judge said to me. That does not sound like neglect. It sounds exactly like the loving, chaotic, low-income home I grew up in. And at the hearing, she asked the right questions and made the appropriate findings to ensure that the child and her siblings were safe, but did so without accepting the caseworker's characterizations of the home at face value. We all get so caught up in the politics of things that I think we get away from some basic tenets that we can all agree on. That judges with diverse backgrounds, with rich life experiences, who have had different jobs, who have struggled, who remember what it was like to be a lawyer, are the judges we all want to appear in front of. And it's not about how old they are or their race or their political affiliation, but a simple recognition that judges that look like the community they serve are a blessing. And it's about an understanding that there is not one kind of judge, that great judges can come from different backgrounds with different philosophies and different experiences. In a court system that is really working, judges come together to complement each other and can make a fabulous ensemble. This is the nature of building what is, in the California state court system, the largest judiciary with trained legal professionals on the face of the earth. And if you talk to any presiding judge in the state, they are not looking for one kind of judge. They are looking to build a roster of diverse judges that can jump in and fill the myriad roles that judges must occupy. Judges at both the trial and the appellate level, and doing judging right, is a team sport. Everyone plays a role. That, of course, is why we never talk about a bench, singular. It is the bench, because we have to line our long bench with many kinds of people, with many kinds of talents, and many kinds of backgrounds. That isn't politics, that isn't DEI, that isn't affirmative action, that's just common sense. Thank you again for this wonderful award.
All right. The Armenian Bar Association, on the occasion of its annual Judges' Night, proudly acknowledges the Honorable Joshua P. Groban, Associate Justice of California Supreme Court, in awe of your fixed commitment to the rule of law, to persisting principled jurisprudence, and to the impartial administration of justice. in admiration of your authentic personification of public service and judicial integrity, with deep appreciation for a lifetime of compelling leadership and dutiful service to the people of the great state of California. We are humbled by and privileged to observe your distinguished and exemplary contributions to the legal profession. June 10, 2025, Los Angeles, California. Congratulations again.
Next, going to introduce Judge Michael Amirian. I can't stress how much time Judge Amirian has devoted to the Armenian Bar Association and to this evening. Judge Amirian is one of the probably most important reason why the choice of food you're having today is what it is. He came here on a weekend and sat and helped choose the food that would be eaten tonight. Great job, Judge Amirian. Judge Amirian has been on the bench since 2018. He's assigned to a IC court in Van Nuys. He's done family law. He's done limited civil, now unlimited civil, and he's a very brilliant man. He's been on numerous court committees. He regularly mentors judges, attorneys, takes law students in as externs. And even before becoming a judge, he was quite the lawyer. He worked for 15 years as a deputy Los Angeles city attorney, prosecuting in the criminal branch and also in the civil branch. He's tried over 50 cases, over 50 jury trials. If anybody knows courtrooms, it's this man. Before that, he worked as a civil litigator, representing individuals in Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies. And as probably most of us have had the honor of doing, or the privilege, he too served as a law clerk for the Honorable Dikran Tevrizian. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Judge Michael Amirian to present the next award.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see you again, back for our annual Judges' Night. As the Bar Association that lays claim to the unofficial title of most judges at a Judges' Night year after year, it is very fitting that this year we honor those who have had and continue to have the most influence on shaping the judiciary as we know it. Indeed, our three honorees are the reason why many of us in this room have the opportunity to serve the public in such a special way every day. Those who aspire to be appointed by the governor quickly learn who the appointment secretary is and the pivotal role they play. Thank you, Justice Groban, for making my professional dream come true 7 years ago. But there are several other committees that are also instrumental to the vetting process, and no judge gets appointed without being touched by them. First, the Judicial Selection Advisory Committee, known as JSAC, and then the State Bar's Commission on Judicial Nominees Evaluation, known as JENNY, and the LA County Bar Association Judicial Appointments Committee. Our next honoree, Associate Justice and soon-to-be Presiding Justice of Division 4 of the 2nd District of the Court of Appeal, Helen Zukin, has served on all of them. And in a theme that leaps out when you read her bio, she doesn't just serve on committees, she chairs them. And if the committee doesn't exist, she creates it and then chairs it. The list makes one wonder if her day has more than 24 hours or if she ever sleeps. In no particular order: JSAC, Jenny, the Central District Merit Selection Panel, LACBA's Judicial Appointments Committee, LACBA's Litigation Section Executive Committee, and president of the City of Los Angeles' Ethics Commission. She did all this while maintaining a dynamic trial practice at one of the preeminent plaintiffs' firms in the country. As a bench officer, she recognizes the difference that we can all make in influencing the judiciary in a different way. Mentorship, not just of aspiring judges, but of organizations who want more representation on the bench, but didn't know how to make that desire a reality. Justice Zukin shares our belief that representation matters and the judiciary reflect the people it serves. By putting that belief into action through her community engagement, Justice Zukin sets an example for all of us to follow. On a personal note, it means a great deal to me to introduce Justice Zukin to you tonight because she sits in the same division where we hope my colleague and our brother, Armin Tamzarian, will join her in 2 weeks. Will join her in 2 weeks following his confirmation hearing, and where my own father sat when he was on the Court of Appeal many years ago. I present to you Associate Justice Helen Zukin.
Thank you. Well, I have to lower it even further, the microphone. Thank you very, very much, Judge. Are you listening, Judge? Thank you very much, Judge Marion, for all of your very kind words. I could say so many of those things about you, and I want to start by congratulating you on your recent award of Trial Judge or Judge of the Year for the San Fernando Valley Bar Association. You are a leader in our legal community, as has been already mentioned tonight. We know it, and it is so well deserved. Congratulations to Justice Groban, to Secretary Cespedes, for the awards that you are receiving this evening. You have both worked tirelessly to transform the California judiciary so that it is not only of the highest quality, but truly does represent the people that we serve. The California judiciary is a beacon for other states, and both of you, with Justice Jenkins, have already made a profound impact on the judiciary. So, one last congratulations. Congratulations to Judge Armin Tamzarian for your nomination to the 2nd District Court of Appeal, to the division I sit in. I am absolutely thrilled, as are my colleagues. What I want to tell you is that when I was a new judge, I shadowed Judge Tamzarian, and I took over his courtroom in family law, very first day. So I know firsthand what a great organized docket he had, how compassionate he was, how efficient in moving the calendar, and what an elegant writer he is. So don't mess it up in the next 2 weeks. Okay? I'm trying my best too. All right. Okay, thank you to the Armenian Bar Association for this award tonight. I am moved to be receiving this award from your organization. And I say that because of your mission of social justice and a commitment to fight for the rights of marginalized communities, both here and abroad. You're doing important work on forming a judiciary and on working on the judiciary here in this country. Your dedication to access to justice and the inclusion in our judiciary of judges with diverse backgrounds, views, and different life journeys sets you apart. Now, your personal and family experiences and the dangers of marginalization that so many of you and your family members have in fact experienced mirrors my own. Some of you in this room already know that my father came to this country a refugee from Italy after World War II. He was in medical school at the University of Pavia near Milan, one of the oldest medical schools in the country, when Mussolini enacted the racial laws. They targeted Italian Jews and those of African descent. My father was immediately deported to an internment camp in central Italy. He spent 3 years in 3 different internment camps. Now, my father spoke 7 languages, and in the last camp, he had a transistor radio. So he was listening. He knew the Germans were coming down the boot, and very soon they would be at Lanciano, which is the village where he was imprisoned. The Allies were coming up the boot, but slowly, and they had not yet arrived. He escaped days before the Germans arrived and deported everyone remaining in the camp he was in to camps in Poland. He fled to the mountain range of Montenero Domo in central Italy, where he spent that winter, and ultimately he went south, where he met Canadian troops and was finally safe. So, I, like so many of you here tonight, I know that unchecked racism, ethnic cleansing, and marginalization of individuals can lead to a society of violence and genocide, and that silence and denial of atrocities, the rewriting of history, or not telling the history, not telling of the atrocities, carries its own risks of repetition and further erodes civil liberties. So, we've already heard tonight what the strongest antidote to this cycle of repression and exclusion is. What is it? An independent judiciary, made up of judges who truly reflect the diversity of the people they serve, a bench undaunted by political pressure, mass hysteria, and groupthink. So together, we must continue our work to protect the independence of our judiciary here, to safeguard the safety of our judges and their families. And we must work to support and continue to promote the work of Governor Newsom and Secretary Cespedes in creating that bench that truly reflects all Californians. So, on that note, let me just spend a moment talking about the Judicial Mentor Program. I'll keep it brief. But some of you know this is near and dear to my heart, and that it was a program originally developed by Justice Jenkins and myself, and taken over and supercharged by Secretary Cespedes and taken throughout the state. So if you know of people that are interested in applying to the bench, if there are judges in the room that are interested in seeking elevation, if you know capable and committed attorneys that will make compassionate, diligent bench officers, please encourage them now to apply to the LA Superior Court Judicial Mentor Program, to seek a mentor, to go to the excellent outreach events that are held. Secretary Cespedes frequently says that a good target date for getting an application to be considered in this administration is August. You can apply after August, right, Secretary Cespedes? But give the administration as much time as they can, because as you know, the vetting process is a long process. So finally, the last thing I want to say is that I suggest that this bar association put on an event, invite the mentor program to come and do a program to help pull back the curtain on the vetting process and maybe do a workshop on how you get through the onerous application. It's been done for other groups, and it's something that I would encourage you to consider doing as soon as possible. And if anyone wants to talk to me about how to put together one of those programs, I'd be happy to do that. So I thank you. Thank you to the Armenian Bar Association for this wonderful award that means so much to me, and for all of the work that you do for the community. Thank you.
All right. The Armenian Bar Association, on the occasion of its annual Judges' Night, proudly acknowledges the Honorable Helen E. Zukin, Associate Justice, Presiding Justice Nominee, California Court of Appeal, 2nd Appellate District, Division 4. Because of your decidedly esteemed judicial service and your enduring commitment to fair play and substantial justice, because you are a bona fide guarantor of a square deal for all those who appear before you, because your pioneering career and compassionate leadership reflect the highest ideals of the judiciary and inspire this and the next generation of legal practitioners to be their very best. With rejoiceful gratitude, we celebrate your generous endowment to the bench, the bar, and the broader community. Congratulations. You're very welcome.
Next, we're going to invite the Honorable Justice Martin Jenkins. Justice Jenkins is a member of the Armenian Bar. He's been on the Supreme Court since November of 2020. He served as a judicial appointment advisor to Governor Gavin Newsom and advised the governor on appointment of judges across California. He's been a justice of the Court of Appeal. He's been a federal court judge. He's been a federal prosecutor for the United States Department of Justice, doing Civil Rights Division Criminal Section in Washington, D.C. He's been a prosecutor for the Alameda County District Attorney's Office. But I think most importantly, he played for the Seattle Seahawks. And definitely from his stature, you could probably tell he must have been a tough tackle.
Not tough enough.
He was recognized last year as one of our honorees on the Judges' Night, and it's a privilege and honor to have him as part of our Bar Association. Justice Jenkins, the stage is yours.
So we've had a very, very full night. When I was here last year, I started my remarks by saying how overwhelmed I was, and I am again. I find myself in that place tonight. What an extraordinary slate of honorees this Bar Association has chosen. And all the themes that we're seeing played out across our country today are embodied in the work that these wonderful men and women that you've chosen to honor tonight have done and done so well. So let's give them a big hand. In particular, I want to congratulate my colleague and friend, Josh Groban, who's about 15 paces as the crow flies from my chambers here in LA. And now the carpet is worn out between our offices. I spend so much time asking him questions. And as you saw tonight, he is just the kindest, most patient person. He answers all my questions, and he never looks askance at me for asking them. And he is every one of those criteria he read on that list. He models them all. So congratulations, Josh. In Helen, you see someone who I agree. I don't think she sleeps at night. I don't know of anyone. I've been a judge for over 35 years and sort of been around this for a while. I don't know of anyone who knows more about judicial vetting and has done more judicial vetting than Helen. And she's done it with aplomb in the federal and state court. And she is, in a very, very large way, responsible for the quality of the bench that we enjoy in California. And so congratulations to you as well, Helen. Before I move to what I was asked to do here tonight, I do want to double down on something that's been said. I was talking to Summer Steffen, the district attorney in San Diego County, and she was talking a bit about the kinds of attacks and threats that our brethren and sisters on the federal bench are receiving these days. And I think sometimes it's easy to lose sight of the fact the judges don't have a militia. We don't control the public fists. Our power is in the issuance of orders. And hopefully people abide by those orders because they believe in the rule of law. And today there's discordant winds blowing from the east. An individual saying, not only do they have a right to criticize judges and threaten judges, but they also have a right to decide whether they will obey the rule of law. The rule of law is in their crosshairs. And the men and women in this room who practice law are the bulwark against that kind of tyranny. You are the best ambassadors that the judicial branch has. You are the best individuals to educate the masses about what we do. And what we do almost seems undemocratic to them. That a judge can overturn the will of the people. Just doesn't seem right. It doesn't sit well. And so I'm just asking you to redouble your efforts to make sure that not only do you advocate for the rule of law, but you educate those who don't understand what it is we do. And so with that, I will move to what is truly a labor of love. That is to introduce to you tonight's last award winner, the Honorable Louis Cespedes. And when I thought about what I would say to you tonight about him, a number of things went through my mind. I first met Luis when I became the appointment secretary. I had been ensconced in the judicial branch for, at that time, about 19 years. And then I found myself in this job that is quite political. And so I organized a meeting in Sacramento and invited some prominent lawyers to come to talk with them about what Governor Newsom's vision was for those who would receive appointments to the bench and hopefully obtain their aid in trying to vet these candidates. And Luis showed up at the meeting. And he clearly made a difference in my mind just by the several thoughtful comments he made about who we should be looking at and why we should be looking at them. And from that day to the entirety of my tenure on that job, he never stopped showing up. He never stopped providing good ideas. I thought I might tell you a little about Luis that you might not know from his position as the appointment secretary. That He has a superior intellect, and he has some remarks prepared for you tonight that I know you will enjoy. He's a voracious reader. He has interests that span psychology and science and history, even some anthropology. He loves music, and we bonded over Arturo Sandoval and John Coltrane. He loves the theater. In fact, several weeks ago, he and his wife, Laurel, who are here tonight, had just gone back to New York and saw the Edward R. Murrow play that's on Broadway right now. And he called me when they left the theater. And I said, I could hear the excitement in his voice. I said, how did you enjoy it? And he said, oh, it was fantastic. He said, but I think I might have been a little too exuberant about the play, and particularly one individual in the play, George Clooney. Said, because when we came out, Laurel said, you have a man crush on him? To which I immediately said, you tell Laurel you got to move over because I got a man crush on him. But I thought I wanted to share with you just 4 things that I learned, gifts that this man gave to me in this job that helped Governor Newsom launch what has turned out to be, and they're on a pace to appoint more judges than any past governor in the history of California. Yeah. He taught me about the legislature, a very important constituency in Sacramento. What did I know about the legislature? But he had worked inside. He knew it inside out. He knew who the players were. And he gave me the keys to the institution to understand it better. He also had great, great empathy and humility. And I think that was born given where he was raised and the family in which he was raised. But it's also because he walked with Cesar Chavez in the Central Valley trying to earn rights for farm workers. And he developed a great empathy as a result of that experience. And it was evident in every time we talked about strategies for trying to find good judges and to broaden the pool, it was evident that he led with empathy and humility, so much so that that became the litmus test for any Gavin Newsom appointed judge to the bench. You will find those qualities in each and every one of them. I would also say, yeah, I think that deserves a hand. He's also a man who connects with people where they are. He has a great ability to judge character and assess character. He's courageous and he's thoughtful. He has all the qualities, actually, that you would look for in a judge. That's why he's in a position to pick judges. And as I said, and as Helen has said, and as Josh has said, was given a talk in New York last summer to the bench there, and the word is out. The California judiciary is the most diverse judiciary in the country. And it's because of the work that has been done by Josh Groban and Luis picking up where Josh left off, and the good work of Helen Zukin. I had a little small part to play, a cameo. But it's because of their work that we, in this state, are blessed to have a judiciary that looks like the people who populate this state, and that is so, so very important. So I'm going to end with this. Luis and I talk somewhat often, and whenever we finish a conversation, I ask about his lovely wife, who has carved out for herself a tremendous career in the human resources employment space. She is the real power behind the throne. And in fact, Luis always tells me You know, Martin, I would not have applied for this job if Laurel hadn't insisted. So we have her to thank for him stepping forward. Thank you, Laurel. So when we finish our conversations, we say to each other, and Luis taught me this, si se puedes. Loosely interpreted means yes, we can. We say it to remind each other that these positions that we occupy are important, but what's really important is that the people we meet, the people we encounter know that they can see more and become more than they can imagine where they stand. That is our job. That is our job, is to make sure that individuals get appointed, law students get a chance to see what is possible. And in Si Se Puede, we remind ourselves of that. So I say to you tonight, Luis, Si Se Puedes, congratulations on this wonderful award.
First, thank you. Would all the servers wave? Thank you to all the servers. Thank you to all the servers, ours in particular. Thank you to all the cooks and chefs who made this wonderful food. To the farmers in the Central Valley and the farm workers that picked our food, let us give thanks. Thank you, Justice Jenkins, for that very kind and generous introduction. You have been an invaluable friend, mentor, and as I've said many times, a brother from a different mother. Thank you. Gracias, hermano. I also want to have every member of our Judicial Selection Advisory Committee, the California Judicial Mentor Program, or the Jenny Commission, if you've ever served on those, including the Los Angeles Appellate or Trial Committees, please stand so we can thank you for your hard work in making my job easier. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. I particularly want to thank my dear friend, Judge Paul Bacigalupo, the prior chair of the mentor program, and the current chair, Judge Lucy Armendariz. Paul, thank you. Thank you also to Lucy Varpetian and the Armenian Bar Association's board for this wonderful award. I'm truly humbled and grateful for this recognition and for your outstanding work you have done to support judicial candidates and for your work to protect the independence of our judiciary. Thank you all. Congratulations also to my dear friends, Justice Joshua Groban and Presiding Justice Helen Zukin, for your well-deserved recognition, for your leadership and support during these past 4.5 years. I am truly grateful to you both. As my brother Martin Jenkins said, I wouldn't be here tonight without the support and love of my wife of 51 years, Laurel Montoya Cespedes, who is here this evening. I love LA because we met in LA. Thank you for encouraging me to apply to be the governor's judicial appointment secretary and making my life so joyful and wonderful. I love you. Our eldest daughter, Larissa, who's a powerhouse in and of herself in Sacramento, married a native of Fresno, a Fresno State Bulldog, a former high school chemistry and calculus teacher, and new attorney, at law, David Oreño. Hold your applause. David's late grandfather was Armenian, making our beautiful grandchildren, Sofia and little Santiago, 1/8 Armenian. They will grow up to be proud of their great-grandfather, an Armenian immigrant who, like many of your ancestors, have made California the 4th largest economy in the world because of its contributions to the $65 billion agricultural industry. Their heritage will never be forgotten. We are living, ladies and gentlemen, through an extraordinary time in American history, in the city of Los Angeles, and in the United States of America. Vital institutions like universities, the press, established law firms, and persons exercising their First Amendment rights peacefully, and the Constitution itself are under siege. I was on the telephone with Justice Helen Zukin and then presiding Judge Eric Taylor on January 6th in the morning, or about noon. What we witnessed on that day and the aftermath has been truly startling and unprecedented. Local and Capitol Police were bludgeoned, attacked, and severely injured, resulting in trauma and, in some cases, suicide. It took hours before the National Guard were called, not by the chief executive, but by the mayor of Washington, D.C., and legislative leaders, hunkered down because of the violent rioting. And yet, after good faith and righteous prosecutions, those violent defenders, many serving lengthy jail sentences, have been granted presidential pardons. Now, a few blocks away, Marines and federally empowered California National Guard are on our streets, truly changing the landscape of our democracy and the rule of law. The president has called the majority of our neighbors exercising their First Amendment rights, most of them peacefully, insurrectionists, professional paid agitators, and, quote, bad people. Now, more than ever, the preservation of an independent judiciary is the final defense of our American way of life and our Constitution. The governor and I believe that those of you who we appoint will have the courage, empathy, humility, and integrity to fulfill our moral and lawful obligation to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. On June 8, 1949, George Orwell published his extraordinary novel, 1984. In that book, he describes a dystopian society where the, quote, party slogan is, quote, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past, end quote. I need not remind people in this audience of the dangers of authoritarian regimes denying, denigrating, or destroying history. You all know from your remarkable and courageous history, it took years for those in power to finally recognize the veracity and brutality of the Armenian genocide. As Governor Newsom proclaimed again on the historic day of remembrance of the Armenian genocide on April 18th of this year, he said this, quote, on April 24th, 1915, the Ottoman Empire began its systematic and systemic genocide of Armenian people, a minority group that had long been targeted as second-class citizens. The Armenian genocide began with the forced deportation and murder of hundreds of Armenian intellectuals and community leaders, and ended in the deaths of 1.5 million men, women, and children. It was the first genocide of the 20th century. Armenians around the world continue to face targeted persecution, evidenced by the violence towards over 120,000 indigenous Christian Armenians from Artsakh in 2023, end quote. Governor Gavin Newsom went on to say, quote, "We honor the strength and resilience of the Armenian people, who have built new lives and thriving communities in all the corners of the globe. Thousands made their homes in California, and we are immeasurably greater for their contributions," end quote. I applaud you, and so does the governor. My friends, as we reflect on what is occurring on the streets of Los Angeles today, let us find common ground with those who are peacefully protesting the attack on immigrant families, who often pick the food we eat and clean the hotels and restaurants in this great state, who deserve due process of law, respect, and human dignity. We are a nation of laws, not of men, and we have for now an independent judiciary for the protection of our democracy from those who seek even more power. Thank you all for this award and for your contributions to the great state of California, a state whose governor is fighting every day, even under the threat of arrest, to protect and defend the independence of our judiciary, our Constitution, and democracy. Muchísimas gracias a ustedes. Peace be with you. God bless you. And thank you very much.
So if there's one thing we have learned tonight, is that we have come home. We have come home in the language and the aromas of the kitchens of our grandmothers, of the hard work of our grandfathers, some of whom we didn't know, many of whom we didn't know. Our fathers, some of in our communities we did not know, but they brought us to this place with a Cespedes, to this place with a Jenkins. I'm not going to go around the whole room, but they better be enough emblematic of who we are and what we stand for. Republican, Democrat, it doesn't matter one bit. You know what it's about? The party of decency. And these men and women represent that. And so let me just read this. Secretary Cespedes, we say that the Armenian Bar Association, on the occasion of its annual Judges' Night, proudly acknowledges the Honorable Luis A. for what? Alfonso Cespedes. Cespedes, you are an ambassador extraordinaire who carries a brimming dossier, delivering on a domestic policy of epic proportions. You help it ensure that those who rise to the bench do so, not so from positions of power and privilege, but from the unpretentious proving grounds of California's rich and diverse communities. You have added to the history of California with hopefulness and meaning, unfolding on each new page a continuing lesson of unity, understanding, and compassion. We, you, the Armenian Bar Association, the gods above us and the grandchildren to come of us, we celebrate with you the quieter yet deeper successes that do not bring with them unimaginative champagne and caviar, but which usher in stronger minds, better hearts, and finer souls. This is not the message from the Armenian Bar Association. This is the message from those who meant the most to you.
Thank you so much. Si se puedes.
And there's a little story that we just want to end with. I know probably there's very little left to pay attention, but just a story who's listening. In 1937, then President FDR asked Congress for the authority to reform the Supreme Court to allow him to appoint additional justices for everyone that was retired by the age 70. This was known as the court packing plan. It was done to try to politically weigh the court in one way or the other. At that time, and this is 1937, the Senate came out and said, quote, "It is essential to the continuance of our constitutional democracy that the judiciary be completely dependent of both the executive and legislative branches of the government. And we assert that independent courts are the last safeguard of the citizen." And in response to that, the quote from the president was, "The president and the Congress are all very well in their way. They can say what they think, but it rests with the courts to decide what they really have thought." Thank you all again for your service, and thank you for coming tonight.